Parking lot. That's when somebody tried to rob him and killed the dude. What the hell my 19-year-old cousin gonna try to rob and kill somebody? Bro, we getting money, man. We getting money. That ain't our stilo. Man,
that nigga gonna have $1,000 around there now.
You know me, bro, that ain't my stilo, bro. You know what I'm saying? That ain't how I get down, bro. Like, that ain't how none of my people get down.
The situation for Boosie is deteriorating by the minute. He's facing intense backlash from all sides. In his own neighborhood, a place he once proudly claimed as his own, people are now so angry they refuse to even speak his name aloud. This hostility stems from the growing belief that he was responsible for ordering the attack on Duke the Jeweler. He isn't merely unpopular anymore. He has been completely cast out and shunned by the very community that raised him. The danger for him is real and immediate. He has already been confronted once, and the word on the street is clear. If he is foolish enough to appear in the area again, the confrontation won't be a simple argument or a fistfight. The consequences could be fatal. Everyone is aware that Boosie runs with a certain crowd, one with a reputation for violence, which makes these threats feel incredibly credible. The circumstances of Duke's murder are what make the whole thing feel so sinister. It didn't feel like a random act of violence or a crime of opportunity. To those who heard the details, it felt calculated and deliberate, like a planned execution. It was a chilling reminder of another tragic incident, bringing back that same sickening sense of dread. This has left everyone asking one terrifying question. Did Boosie genuinely set up Duke to be killed? Or is he being positioned as a scapegoat for a scheme much larger than he is? To truly grasp why public opinion has turned so decisively against Boosie, you need to understand the man who was lost and the specific events of that night. Duke was not your average jewelry salesman. He was a self-made success story. He built his entire reputation and business from the ground up through relentless hard work. He never asked for handouts or special treatment. He earned his place by creating stunning custom pieces that became the talk of the town. His clientele wasn't limited to local artists. Major celebrities were also known to spend significant money on his designs. His trip from Chicago to Houston was purely business. The person who invited him down was none other than Boosie himself. Boosie had reached out, expressing interest in commissioning some custom work. Trusting this invitation, Duke arrived prepared for a major deal, carrying a duffel bag filled with his most valuable creations, a collection worth a fortune. Tragically, he had no idea this would be his final journey. That very bag, packed with his life's work, would not return with him. Instead, it would later surface in a location so shocking that people still talk about it in hushed tones. The scene of the crime was a late-night dice game. We now know this wasn't a friendly gathering. It was a trap from the very beginning. This was confirmed by Wack 100, a figure with strong connections to the street scene, who publicly voiced what many were already thinking. He didn't mince words. He stated plainly that if you ever receive an invitation to a dice game in Houston, particularly one involving a person like Jay Prince, you should turn and run in the opposite direction. According to his account, entering such a game means you are likely to be cheated out of your money or suffer a far worse fate. Duke learned this brutal lesson firsthand. Wack even explained the mechanics of the con. The dice being used were not fair. They were manipulated to ensure that only Jay Prince and his associates could win. Everyone else at the table was essentially a target, there to be stripped of their cash. For those familiar with this setup, Duke's death was not a surprise. It seemed like the predictable, grim conclusion to a night designed for theft and deception. That evening, Duke was on a winning streak. He was so excited that he began recording himself on his phone, proudly showing off stacks of cash and celebrating his good luck. On the surface, it looked like a man joyfully boasting about his success. However, when these videos were examined after the fact, people noticed a very different story unfolding in the background. The real narrative was hidden in the subtle actions of the others in the room. There were furtive looks, quiet conversations, and strange hand gestures exchanged between people. The atmosphere, upon a second look, was not one of celebration but of tension. Adding a critical financial motive, It is rumored that Jay Prince takes a significant cut from every game. So, when Duke started winning big and disrupting the normal flow, he wasn't just having a lucky night, he was interfering with the profits of the very people running the operation. He was becoming a problem. The most damning evidence may lie within those same videos. As Duke filmed his roles completely unaware, Boosie was captured on camera leaning back and making a subtle signal to his nephew. Immediately after this signal, the entire mood of the gathering shifted. The nephew made eye contact with another man, a quiet tap on the shoulder was exchanged, and the cheerful noise in the room seemed to vanish. One moment, Duke was all smiles enjoying his night. The next, a cold silence fell, as if everyone except him knew what was about to happen. The end came quickly. Duke left the game alone without any protection, carrying his incredibly valuable bag through a poorly lit parking lot. One moment he was replaying his wins in his head, and the next, the silence was shattered by gunshots. This sequence of events raises serious questions. Why would Boosie, a wealthy man himself, invite an out-of-town guest carrying millions of dollars in valuables and not ensure he had security? Furthermore, why didn't Jay Prince, as the host of the game, make any effort to protect a player leaving with such a large amount of cash and jewelry? Allowing a high roller to walk out alone and unprotected seems like a recipe for disaster, or worse, an intentional setup. The official story began to fall apart almost immediately. Police arrived on the scene with the initial report of an armed robbery. However, the evidence at the scene told a confusing story. Duke was found deceased, but the heavy, expensive chain he was known for still hung around his neck. This detail made no sense. What kind of robber would commit murder, and then flee without taking the most obvious and valuable item right there on the victim? Then came the most shocking twist: the duffel bag. The bag filled with Duke's unique jewelry designs, which had vanished from the scene, was eventually tracked down by investigators. And where did it reappear? It was discovered in Boosie's possession. That bag left the dice game, but Duke never did. Boosie attempted to control the narrative by going live on social media, pushing the theory that it was just a tragic robbery gone wrong. But his story was not believable. He seemed nervous and shaky, his voice lacking conviction. He even claimed he hardly knew Duke, and that the jeweler had simply walked off on his own after the game. Once the bag was linked directly back to him, his entire defense collapsed. His anxious, pale demeanor made him look like a man terrified of being discovered, not an innocent friend mourning a loss. Now the public has made up its mind. Nobody is listening to Boosie's explanations anymore. Every word he speaks seems to dig his hole deeper. As the videos and interviews spread across social media, the consensus has become overwhelming. One popular online comment perfectly captured the collective suspicion. Boosie seemed to have an intimate knowledge of Duke's every move that night, as if he had been watching him the entire time. The court of public opinion has reached its verdict, and for Boosie, the walls are closing in. That powerful public reaction didn't come from nowhere. It resonated because it confirmed the quiet rumors everyone was already sharing in the neighborhood. The situation grew so serious and unstable that federal investigators had no choice but to get involved. Once they entered the picture, the case accelerated quickly. Boosie was already being watched for separate weapons violations, but Duke's death transformed a minor observation into a top priority. Agents launched a new, dedicated investigation, and almost immediately, troubling evidence began to surface. Their first major step was to track the last known location of Duke's cell phone. The final signal placed it at Boosie's own studio. This was a critical piece of information. A phone doesn't transport itself. Someone from Boosie's inner circle had to have moved it there after the shooting. This wasn't a simple mistake or a piece of sloppy work. It was an act of sheer boldness, the kind you only see from people who believe they are completely above the law. The evidence became even more chilling from there. Federal officers conducted a detailed forensic examination of the rental car Duke had been using. Inside, they discovered fingerprints that were a perfect match for Boosie's own cousin and nephew. This discovery cast that subtle signal Boosie made during the dice game in a terrifying new light. It now looked less like a casual gesture, and more like the direct order that sealed a man's fate. Just when it seemed the case couldn't get any more damning, a new witness came forward with a detailed account that even seasoned investigators found compelling. This person had been outside the building that night and saw the entire event unfold. They described watching Duke walk toward his vehicle, everything seeming normal, before Boosie's nephew suddenly leaped out from a hiding spot, launching a clear ambush. The observer stated that Duke threw the first punch in a desperate attempt to fight back, but he was hopelessly outmatched. Within seconds, gunfire erupted and Duke fell. Most importantly, the witness was adamant that this was not a robbery. No one was seen tearing jewelry from his neck or immediately grabbing his valuable bag. This was about punishment, a brutal, ugly retaliation for winning a game that was designed to be unwinnable. This single detail completely shifted the narrative from a random mugging to a premeditated murder. Now the federal investigation is in full swing. Authorities are examining every aspect of Boosie's world. His financial records, his business dealings, his private communications, and his entire network of associates. They have even expanded their focus to include a key family member linked to his crew, ensuring they leave no stone unturned. This is far from a casual inquiry. It is an intense campaign of surveillance and pressure. Meanwhile, Boosie's life in his own community is falling apart. The last time he dared to appear in the neighborhoods he once controlled, a group of men attacked him violently. This kind of public humiliation is a devastating blow, signaling a complete loss of respect and power. People now treat him as a target, a man whose time is running out. The pieces of this puzzle continue to fit together perfectly. Every time Boosie attempts to control the story, new information emerges that places him closer to the crime than he has ever admitted. The pressure is immense. Federal authorities are tightening their grip, and his former allies on the streets are watching his every move, waiting for the final, inevitable conclusion.